Right, brilliant. Okay, let's thank you and welcome to Thursday Garden Chat. So I am in Holland at the moment, momentarily via Germany. I was at the most fantastic annual conference last weekend at Grunberg, and it really is a plant geek heaven. I mean, it's just wonderful. Can't recommend it highly enough. And then hung out in Germany for a few days, and I'm on my way to Lithuania to teach over the weekend for Lena. So I'm really looking forward to that, as long as the flights don't get held up by this storm that's supposed to be coming in. Anyway, so yeah, so that's my week, and I just want to say about a few things that are coming up before Noel introduces our guests. So on the 28th, which is next week, we have a webinar with the wonderful Kelly and Sue from Far Reaches. And Far Reaches is the most wonderful nursery. It's one of the best nurseries I've ever been to. And it is called Far Reaches for a reason. It's right up, well, it's on the Puget Sound, I guess, but it's right at the very edge, and it's wonderful. And if people are watching and they think, well, that's not going to be relevant, it jolly well is relevant, because the plants that they grow, certainly we can grow them here in the UK. And the webinar is about rare and unusual woodlanders and shade lovers. And when I was going around the nursery, Kelly kept picking up a pot and saying, well, this is unusual. And after about the 43rd plant, I said, do you know what, Kelly, you don't have to say they're all unusual. So it really is the most fantastic nursery. So do tune in for that. Then on the 6th of March, we've got the amazing Roy Diblick talking about perennial plantings, planning and caring for. This is a very North American feel at the moment, everybody.
It is, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And then we go north of the border on the 11th to Canada with Ben O'Brien, who is being a bit of a maverick up there and growing in grit. And he's set himself up some trials over the last couple of years in Ontario, and he's going to be talking through the results of those trials. So those are three of the three next up and coming webinars. There's plenty more after that are absolutely brilliant. It just so happens that they're all North American, but that's great. But I also want to mention one live event that's coming up, which is really special, which is our first live event of this season, if you like. It's in March the 15th. And that is Midori Shintani, who's the head gardener of the Tokachi Millennium Forest Garden in Hokkaido. And she is going to be talking about the 72 seasons of nature in Japan. We're going to have supper at Yo Valley. And then after her talk, her and Dan Pearson, who designed the garden in Hokkaido, are going to be in conversation. So it's a really special start to the evening. So if anyone's on this side of the Atlantic, as opposed to on your side of the Atlantic, or even fly over for it, why not? I'll get shot down in flames for suggesting that. But no, it's a lovely evening. It's a great start to our season. We've got some cracking live events lined up this year, and we've got a couple more real goodies that we're going to announce in the March newsletter. So have a look through the events pages, our diary pages, if you haven't sort of kept up to date with what's going on. But we've got lots of lovely new venues. So yeah, some great webinars coming up, and I'll hand over to Noel.
Great. Thank you, Annie. Thank you.
That's all right.
So a little while ago, I was asked to be on a jury for a design competition organized by Pacific Horticulture. Can't really say magazine now, but Pacific Horticulture portal website. Wonderful organization for West Coast gardeners. That's the West Coast of North America, by the way. And I was a bit overwhelmed. We had something like 63 submissions, all of them making a real effort to address issues of sensible water use, sustainability, biodiversity, use of native plants. And after a while, I mean, I just went into a kind of state of sort of almost brain fog, really difficult to distinguish one from another, trying to remember and prioritize and do all the rest of it as you're meant to do in this situation. And I couldn't say I was a particularly sort of effective judge, I don't think. I mean, it didn't help that it's just, I suppose, so much has happened in California since I was last there, which is a few years ago. But there was one entry that really, really stood out, which was a an involvement with the community in the regeneration of Ridge Lane in San Francisco, which is one of those, started out as one of those urban spaces I think a lot of us are very familiar with, where you have a kind of like a cut through that goes along behind people's houses and gardens and links one group of houses with another, a sort of informal passageway. And I think we know most of those spaces as quite kind of liminal, and very often strewn with rubbish, the odd mattress, the odd shopping trolley, and the other traditional ingredient, at least in Britain, the odd sofa. There's sort of uncared for spaces, but absolutely vital in terms of how people in reality actually get from A to B. So this was a project to sort of basically create a walkable space and an attractive environment. And I just really loved it, and was a real sense of community expressed in the pictures and the information provided. So that brought me to the landscape architect partnership who worked with Ridge Lane residents, Nahal, Sohbati and Eric Arneson, who have a business called Topophylla. Am I pronouncing that right? Topophylla?
That works.
That works. I'm not quite sure whether it's yes. They're based in Santa Barbara, Southern California, and they're a young up-and-coming practice, and we're delighted to welcome them. So welcome, Nahal and Eric. So now let's hear from you two. What got you started with landscape and gardens?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I could start just with, I had the great privilege of growing up in California. My parents took the initiative to take me out hiking and experience nature. My dad was a botany major in college, and he also teaches or he taught science. He's retired now, but he'd bring me outside and tell me about all the native plants and the things that were growing around. So that had a really strong spark in myself as a young man. And then I was also very creative. I wanted to become a fine arts major in college, but then I did that and then figured out it's not really as a valid initiative to go forward as a career. So I ended up finding this perfect meeting in between fine arts and the sciences and nature, and that is landscape architecture. And it really just, ever since then, I can't imagine doing anything else. It's the perfect career. It's a perfect meeting of passion and profession. So that's how I got started.
Yeah, and about me, I was born in Iran, Tehran, and like Eric and many of us, I'm sure, was born into a family that valued our time in nature, and they really wanted us to be outdoors. And I guess one of the main things they gave us is to be curious and ask why, and to go deeper behind the reason everything that we see, and not just pass by it quickly. Another thing they taught us to have empathy for not just ourselves, but what's around us. And then, unfortunately, I wish I could see Iran more. I moved out of Iran when I was 15, but it's still a big part of my identity and something that I always go back to and, connect the dots later. I guess after that, we moved to Dubai, and I studied interior design for my undergrad. And as much as I love the design part of it, I always felt like I want my design to have a life of its own after I'm done designing it. So that took me to landscape architecture, where the space that you design is not done when you're done. It starts like evolving and changing for many years. It keeps getting better and better. So yeah.
Right. Could you tell us a bit more about your practice, about the kind of clients you have and what you do for them?
Yeah, so as of now, we're primarily high-end residential. We have a mix of other projects ranging in commercial and also like Ridge Lane public projects. But most of all, it's high-end residential in Santa Barbara to Los Angeles region, also some in the Bay Area, Northern California. And that's just what as a small firm, that's just the easiest type of projects to grasp onto and handle. It's just Nahal and myself, so we're looking to expand in the future, but as of now, that's the primary focus.
I would add to that we are a process-driven firm. We value our process as much as we value our the end design. We really took this opportunity of our design process to both learn, not just ourselves, but for our clients to learn, for all the parties involved. And we feel like the design process is very informative for all the people involved. So we kind of cater our design process for each project that we get uniquely to that to get the best process and not just results.
Right. And one of the really big changes in North American landscape has been this explosion of interest in native plants, which of course in California, you do have a very, very rich varied flora. I mean, how have you responded to being able to respond to that?
And absolutely, I mean, it's really lovely to be in California in this time that this is happening, because it's been so long that garden design has just been kind of stagnant. It's been a status quo for almost hundreds of years. And we're in this like renaissance in California. I'm sure there's other places that are doing it, just that we're here, so we're noticing it a little bit more. And it's this fascinating thing that we see designers doing. We see nurseries taking hold of this and growing more native plants. And we just see the culture of people here. They want more native plants. I think people come to California for the natural beauty, and it makes the most sense to embrace that and then bring that to your own yard. So that's something that that's kind of a philosophy that we really believe in, that if you live here and you love the beauty, embrace it, nurture it, grow it. Let's make it stronger so we can improve the destruction that we've done in the past, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that interests me about this whole native plant movement is that we're actually getting quite a lot of species that are perhaps relatively new to horticulture or landscape use being brought into cultivation. So we're on a very steep learning curve. I mean, I'm saying we a bit because I actually live in central Portugal. I don't know if I've disclosed this. And our latitude is kind of probably a bit more like Oregon, but we were in that same sort of Mediterranean hot, dry summer climate, and summer drought and heat and fire are the kind of issues we have to think about. And although we've got this very, very well established traditional flora, there's now sort of adding to it other locally native species. And one of the issues we're finding is that of longevity. Some of these species don't actually last that long in cultivation, and others are highly flammable. I mean, how much confidence do you have in using some of these newer species, and what kind of information are you able to access about them?
I mean, that's a fantastic point. A lot of the plants in the past that were used for their durability, their ease of maintenance. So shrubs that are evergreen that, just take a shearing and that's it. But I think it just takes a paradigm shift of how people maintain and look at gardens. Gardens are not static things. We shouldn't look at them as that. They're dynamic spaces that shift over time. Things die, things replace other things, and they grow. So I think to look at it as, if a plant lives 3 or 4 years and dies off, then that's an opportunity for a new plant in its place. I think it just takes a new way to look at how we interact with these gardens.
And really stop romanticizing the gardens and thinking of them as this items that we own. These are living things that we are sharing with the nature. And it's just, I feel like it's kind of like a movement that we have now, especially in California, how people start appreciating healthier food, organic food. It's the same thing. It's a natural environment that is going to benefit you. And the more you give it time and, work on it, the more benefit you get from it. so that a lot of people here are really used to, having a basic lawn, and that just comes with all the houses. They don't know what's going to replace that. So that just takes few of precedents for people to see what can replace these spaces that are useless and not as beautiful, because it really doesn't belong here with the rain and the season condition that we have. And it's what's really magical about garden is these moments that you like, the memories that you really make with each of these plants and how they change during different seasons. And people are really missing out not having this seasonality in their life.
Yeah, I think that brings up a great point, that a lot of people really value fall color in cold climates, but in California we have very spectacular fall colors, and I think that's part of the thing that people are noticing, is that there's a lot of plants that go summer dormant and they turn like a copper bronze, and it really looks magnificent in the sunlight and things like that. That people can shift their idea of what garden ideal beauty is. I think that's just what it takes. But maintenance is absolutely a concern. A lot of maintenance, landscape maintenance now is more towards the old school method of gardening. So I think it really just takes maybe a retooling of, it's not just going to be a lawnmower and a weed whacker. It's going to be more hand picking and also less herbicide. I mean, that's a big no for us if we can avoid it, and just hand picking weeds and more love and care in the garden.
I mean, how much progress are you able to make with, I mean, I can imagine perhaps you do work with particular garden management companies who you're able to introduce to new methods?
Yeah, every garden kind of has its own maintenance staff, depending on who we're working with. But there does take some like learning of what to do, and we do have to tell them sometimes, no, this plant doesn't need this much water.
And we are learning ourselves too. We always try new plants, and each condition is different. You can expect the same plant to work the same way in different gardens. So we are learning. It's both learning process for us, the maintenance crew, and the client, to see how to make this garden beautiful and make it use its potential, basically. We do have projects that right now, there's one example that we just installed.
Sure.
I think we can share the screen if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So we do have one project that it's like a playground, a natural playground for a residential project. If I can go to the next slide. Yeah. So for this project, we used a lot of repurposing a lot of the trees that was falling on the site, and repurpose it as a stepping stone for the kids to use it. One thing that is unique for maintaining this, that we are working with the contractors and a maintenance crew, is we don't have any edging in the garden. So it's all about creating this natural edge that the native lawn here is going to grow and blend into the other planted areas. So it's going to take us a few rounds of going there and talking about the limitations of this, but and how to maintain it so it's both usable for the client, and something that landscape maintenance crew can achieve.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, we try to avoid using traditional lawns as much as possible. The species we're using here is Agrostis pallens, which is native to the west coast of California and Oregon. So this grass we've used it quite a bit already, but it's much less water and also mowing requirements, so less carbon emissions from those maintenance tools. So this will kind of creep and blend into the planters, and that's intentional, and it'll look, as wild and natural as possible. Is the goal.
Okay, so I was wondering if perhaps we could move on and take a walk up Ridge Lane.
Yeah. Yeah, let's open up the. So are you seeing the
Oh, here we
screen?
are. Yeah, we've got Ridgeley now. Oops, no.
Okay, thank you so much for your time and for joining this presentation. It's a very special project for us, especially because we started working on it as we were students. So,
We're back in the garden. We need that picture of Ridge Lane up again. There we are. That's it.
yeah. So a little bit about our background. We both studied at Academy of Art University in San Francisco. And it was during one of our studio projects that we got this opportunity to work on a community project called Ridge Lane. That this project started as a, just a student studio project, and it later got built. That I will get into more detail of that later. So I'm going to talk about vacant lots in general at first, and then share some stories of Ridge Lane and share how it became an opportunity for ecological and social improvement. So Ridge Lane is one of the 1,500 city-owned vacant lots in the city of San Francisco. Each of these parcels may look insignificant when you look at them in person, but they have the combined area of greater than half of Golden Gate Park, which is the largest park in San Francisco. Like Noel said, these spaces are usually they have characteristics such as they're either relatively small, they're oddly shaped, or are in wrong locations. These characteristics often limit their potential for development, and they usually leave a void in their communities. And these vacant lots happen to be concentrated in lower income neighborhoods, and in general in neighborhoods that are more in need of environmental improvement. And they also carry a negative stigma. They have this visual and physical signals signals of warning and paint a red flag that this area is not safe. This negative impact isn't only limited to these vacant lots, but it also radiates outwards to adjacent lots, and depending on the size of the vacant lot and where they are. And it's the opposite effect is also possible if these lots are positively improved. It can have positive effect to the adjacent lots as well. And these lands can be appreciated for what's already there, because they usually don't have a lot of development and they don't have excessive maintenance. They often symbolize maybe seasonal wilderness in their areas, and they can also support a surprising amount of wildlife within urban setting. So a mix of opportunistic, exotic plants, sometimes native, but mainly invasive plants, can often provide a refuge for these local habitats. And they can become a stepping stone for different species to travel between larger patches of habitat. A lot of the times, these spaces serve as a public space, and they can have a significant contribution to social engagement. A lot of the times communities take charge of these spaces and activate them by, community gardening, guerrilla gardening. So yeah, now Ridge Lane is one of these vacant public right-of-ways in Ingleside neighborhood of San Francisco. It's about 15 foot wide, which is about 5 meters, and about quarter of mile long, 400 meters. It's including 5 individual parcels that are separated by city streets. So it starts with this parcel 1 at the very top that is relatively flat, but 2% slope, and it gets significantly steeper as it goes further to parcel, especially 4 and 5. So this area used to be known for fields of wildflower, and it was a seasonal destination for people to pick flowers. And it later became a housing community in early 1900s. Ridge Lane is a result of these convergent growth of two housing developments that were separately coordinated and didn't really align properly. And it ended up to this oddly shaped lot that was supposed to be a street. They call it paper street, meaning it's only plotted as a street on a paper, but it remained vacant because it wasn't, the size wasn't enough to, and it was too steep to become an actual street or housing. So you can see that in this jog that is connecting the two sides of street on both sides of Ridge Lane, and also the two different naming system on both sides. And like other vacant lots, because of lack of community investment, it became a magnet to crimes such as robbery, dumping of garbage, and it became a really undesirable space within the neighborhood. However, Ridge Lane was also a shortcut for the neighbors to connect, to navigate through their neighborhood, and especially to connect to their local public transit hub. And you can, a trail of trampled grass and loose soil is this evidence to necessity for a designated path, a need for a safe path that is accessible to all the different range of mobility. So it was about in 2012 that a group of neighbors came together and motivated by this idea that having a good design and management can reduce the crime in their neighborhood, and that it can improve the life of the neighbors. They started a nonprofit called Ridge Lane. It was about 2015 that they reached out to the school that we were studying at and asked the students to come up with different design ideas so they can see what can happen in this narrow land. And me and Eric were one of those students that were participating in this design charrettes and meetings. So we went through different charrettes and ideation practices, and after presenting our design, the neighbors really felt inspired by our design, and we started working together with the city departments like Parks Alliance and Department of Public Works to make this vision come true. And to make sure that this future design represents everybody, we had meetings, and we heard about different, members' hopes and dreams for future of Ridge Lane. They all had this mutual goal of creating a safe, comfortable space that represents soul of Ridge Lane. And they wanted something that the whole neighborhood can be proud of. And for us to understand what makes Ridge Lane unique and what makes it special, we had to spend a lot of time there at different days and different times. What we noticed was that when we were there, we noticed a lot more butterflies there than we usually notice in the city. And that made us really curious to search this further and to know what's the reason behind that. What we learned was that the topography of Ridge Lane and its location on the ridge top is making it a great location for hilltopping of butterflies. Hilltopping is a mating behavior in butterflies and some other insects that they fly to and congregate at the highest elevation of their habitat to find the proper mate. And Ridge Lane, with all of its invasive plants such as wild fennel and mustard and the shelters it was providing for these habitats, it was a perfect hilltopping location for these butterflies. And after we shared this finding with the neighbors, it immediately sparked a passion between them, and it was something that they were really proud of, and they wanted to improve it for others to enjoy. I think I pass this to Eric now to talk about the design phase.
So when looking at the design for Ridge Lane, we took direct inspiration from the presence of the butterflies on this hilltopping habitat. So we looked at the venation patterns and the butterfly wings from a macro level as well as the microscopic level. And we found the Voronoi pattern that is present in it. And we figured this was a great design language to employ when looking at the layout of the lane. So the lane is 15 feet wide along that 400-meter stretch. So it's a bit of a challenge, but we figured if we arrange these Voronoi patterns in a certain way, we can really get a maximized benefit from this narrow space. So with this design, we created these undulating patterns of geometries, which are very geometric in nature, but also organic. So it allowed for opportunities for different programs that we could use in the design. So we had the opportunity to avoid physical barriers such as the exposed bedrock. We had the ability to create gathering spaces for social interaction in the neighborhood. And we also had the ability to create pockets of larger plantings for ecological benefit. So here you can see that the pathway avoids and kind of undulates to create a more beneficial place for planting, but also a more inspiring experience when walking down it. And then here is a diagram kind of showing the pockets of planting. So we're maximizing the planting space. So if you just did a straight line down here, it'd be very narrow plants on each side. And the benefit here is that we're defragmenting the habitat that we are providing.
Limiting the
the fragmentation. So the parcel 1 was the first one to get built. That was relatively flat. Then we came up with a master plan for the rest of the parcel to continue down. And as Nahal said, this was a pathway that was used by the neighbors to access. It was a shortcut for the neighbors to access from the top to the bottom. So it was very much needed for this area. And we, when looking at the planting palette for Ridge Lane, we wanted to provide not only beauty for the neighbors that experienced it, but also the habitat that it would support for butterflies and other insects that could occupy it. So we looked at creating a balance of plants that are not only just nectar for the butterflies, but also host plants for their complete life cycle. And when researching these plants, we wanted to know what butterflies were there currently, and then what butterflies that we could design this garden for. So we observed which ones were there, and then we also used tools like iNaturalist to research what could possibly be there, and then that informed our decisions when deciding what plants to include. So we did move forward with a design that had ornamental non-natives, but mostly focused on native plants that are regionally from the area of San Francisco and the bordering Bay Area region. So this is a mix of ground covers that are native, and then each parcel had its own unique mix of plants that benefit from that microclimate. So parcel 1 was relatively flat, so we used a lot of plants that are, and it's sheltered by these structures, so they're more shade tolerant plants, whereas the other parcels had a mix of more like chaparral, coastal sage scrub kind of plants. And the first parcel to get built was parcel 1, since it was the most flat and easiest to build. And this is the design for that. So using that Voronoi pattern, and also 4 strategically placed trees between the buildings to create shelter and a more dynamic space, as well as a clear line of sight through the full garden. So there is a sense of safety and openness, even though it is relatively enclosed. And the end result is a garden that is, it's a peaceful path of travel. There's a lot of native plants packed in there. And there's also significant habitat that was not there before. Parcel 4, which is 3 parcels down from parcel 1, it was the most dangerous and treacherous of all the spaces. It was very rocky, and it was the reason that Ridge Lane started, because several people got seriously injured trying to navigate this very slippery, dangerous path. So now there is a very safe and accessible route for the neighbors. It's a mix of concrete and redwood steps. So the redwood is over the areas where there's exposed bedrock. So we want to preserve that identity as well as save costs on excavation. And where there was excavation, we reclaimed all the rubble and repurposed it in gabions, which are not only functional as seats, but they're also spaces for habitat for insects and other organisms in the area. So now Ridge Parcel 4 is this, it has a pocket of space at the top, which is great for gathering of the neighbors. And it's also a safe path there. And focusing on accessibility, we used ADA handrails in America for accessibility standards.
And bollard lights.
And bollard lights for safety at night, which the bollard lights are activated when it is dark, and they recharge with solar power. So they're completely off the grid. So it's really important for this parcel since there are no electrical hookups. So what was once treacherous, dangerous space is now accessible for many of the neighbors, and it becomes a space for social gathering, but also a place for habitat to gather and congregate. So there are now nesting birds. The butterfly habitat has also increased significantly. And this is due in part because of the love and care that came with the neighbors. There's routine maintenance days for the people that live there, as well as the neighboring schools come every few months to maintain the space, which is one of the most important things about having a garden is having good maintenance. This isn't just take care of Ridge Lane itself, but also creates these bonds within the neighborhood, and maybe people that wouldn't interact with each other, now they meet and greet each other. And this was especially important during COVID because they did have these gardening days that brought people outside, which was very fantastic to be a part of. And there's also planting days and butterfly workshops where the neighbors can learn about plants in their neighborhood. And then this is incredibly important when looking at the context. So Ridge Lane is a very narrow strip of land, but when you zoom out and look at the yards around it, there's a significant space that could have the same impact. And so with that in mind, we did a lot of reach out to the neighbors, so educational flyers about the butterflies and the plants that they're associated with, as well as giving out seeds of native plants that would grow well in this area. So gave these out to the neighbors in the hopes that they would employ the same techniques that we were doing on Ridge Lane in their own backyards to expand that ecological impact. And we also, there's billboards on the lane that community boards that people can post their comments, but also educational information we posted there. So making sure that we reach as many people as possible, regardless if they lived on the lane or not. And while doing this community outreach, one of the plants that we used on Ridge Lane was incredibly, attractive to the neighbors, and something that was a unique communal passion between them was the California pipevine plant, which is the host plant for the California pipevine swallowtail, which is endangered in San Francisco and nearly extinct in habitat there. So there's an initiative to bring this plant back in San Francisco and reestablish this habitat. Ridge Lane is now an extension of that habitat. And then many of the neighbors took it upon themselves to plant them in their own backyards, so thus extending that habitat even further. And it's a really beautiful thing because a lot of the neighbors repost these on social media, and it really shows the impact that Ridge Lane has had, not only with the pipevine swallowtail, but also other elements of habitat, such as birds and other insects in the area. So yeah, what was once an insignificant path in a dangerous place of travel is now a shared passion with the land as well as Ridge Lane itself. You can close out.
Okay. And I think, we know that it's naive to think Ridge Lane is going to solve this habitat loss in San Francisco because it's very narrow and insignificant. But again, zooming out, applying the same principle to all of these vacant lots, the 1,500 vacant lots in the city of San Francisco, and count on each of these lots to have an impactful and valuable effect on not just habitat-wise, but social-wise, we definitely can make a lot of bigger impact in the city.
Yeah, not just the city, but around the world.
Around the world.
Especially. So, yeah. Thank you guys. Happy to talk more or answer questions.
Great, thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. I have an initial question. How was it funded in terms of, because obviously, you know, the hard landscaping eats up a lot of money. So yeah, what was the funding and how did that happen?
But
There were multiple sources of funding, but all of it was public from the city. So there were grants which were matched by the neighbors themselves. So the neighbors would work on.
like parcel one was a lot of grants. There were add backs that the city of San Francisco was providing some money for like small projects like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, parks and public spaces are a lot of the times, you know, political to a lot of people in charge. So they funded that they need people's attention. And once that, you know, politician is out of office, it's not the next one's project anymore.
Yeah.
So we are now kind of hanging in that zone of finding someone that is passionate enough to fund the other two parcels.
Yeah, as of now, there are two pieces in the middle which are not completed. So we did the easiest one and the hardest one.
Yeah,
and then
good for you.
in between, we're hoping that all this success would lead to some funding, but unfortunately, it has not. There were some issues in the local politics that led to them being a little bit more tight with money. So unfortunately, that's where it's at now. But we're confident that it's gonna get built soon.
And has it influenced and sparked any similar, you know, spin-offs in other areas, small and large, and you know, have you
Absolutely
a knock-on effect? Yeah.
There's been a butterfly effect of sorts.
Lovely. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, there's a lot of other projects, and they've reached out to us and the Ridgeline neighbors for kind of tips on how to maneuver this process. So, and there's other projects that also inspired Ridgeline that already were happening in the city. So it's
they're feeding from each other for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it just the sense of community that it must create. You know, people meeting each other and getting together and working in a sort of common way, you know, on a common thing, without any pressure. You know, they can just work alongside each other and get to know each other without it being forced. You know, it's a really nice way of people integrating, isn't it? And sort of a community coming together. Yeah, fantastic. We've got some lovely comments. Somebody's saying that it's like a mini Highline.
Yeah, exactly. It's a narrow path. Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot less budget though.
You mentioned some other projects in San Francisco. So is there quite a lot happening at the moment in terms of community projects?
Yes, is it Street Parks Alliance?
Yeah, there used to be this program in San Francisco called City Streets program that was in charge of these spaces that are so odd that they cannot be a space that the city can maintain, but they give it the power to the people to, you know, activate those. It's not as successful for many years, but we are hoping it will come back because these are really social gems that, you know, bigger parks cannot achieve that sort of connection between communities. There's spaces that are, you know, people are using every day, and it's not in a formal manner. It's like they walk on Ridge Lane every day and they see their neighborhood and get a sense of what's really making up this living space they're sharing. So yeah, there are many of them that are they're done and successful. There are still a lot of them waiting for funding too. So
I think the kind of magical unifying or the shared common denominator between all of these is that there's a passionate group of neighbors that take the initiative to take ownership and improve these spaces that are around them. And that's what it really takes, is without the neighbors, this and nothing like this would ever happen.
Yeah, yeah.
They maintain it, they're passionate about their asking us questions on what plants should be there in place of others. It's really magical to see them, I mean, really take ownership of it and care of it.
Since like 2015, we have monthly meetings, like once a month, every second Saturday,
Second Tuesday.
second Tuesday of every month, we are meeting. Either it used to be in the local library, but now it's online with the Zoom. But yeah, they still talk about their goals. It's a lot of years that people are still passionate and they still have this goal of, you know, making it happen.
Yeah.
So we are really hoping that the city will see that passion and making it to something that people can use it.
What I found interesting was that you said that you enjoy your work being more process led, which I can see from just behind you, all the sketches and wonderful visuals and things. And do you think that a project like this, I mean, probably every project, but a project like this benefits from that because people are seeing things develop and there's possibilities for people to interact and have changed the way things are, rather than coming up with a sort of fait accompli and say, this is what we've designed, isn't it wonderful? So this process that they can feel more part of it and get a greater understanding of it. You know, it really is it's such a nice way to work, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think the reason we saw this value in the process was because of Ridge Lane, because it was the first project, the big project we worked on, and it was really involving different people of the neighborhood with different opinions. And, you know, as a designer, we like seeing beautiful things, but I think we are at a point that we don't need more of just beautiful things. We need things to function and be valuable to their communities. And these public spaces really need to represent who's using them.
Yeah.
We don't need another perfect urban park that is just pretty.
The beauty comes from the success and how it's used.
Jeanette's asking about the longevity of the redwood walkway. Well, what's the sort of life expectancy of that?
Yeah, that was definitely a concern. One of the alternatives was using the plastic material, which we weren't too keen on. I mean, we're hoping it gets a good 40 years out of it if it's maintained properly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sustainable product, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're hoping that, I mean, if anything, a few boards can be replaced now and then. And the Ridge Lane does have a budget set aside for, you know, general maintenance, so they can hire one need be. But yeah, that was definitely something that came up. But we just really didn't want to use more plastic.
No.
It was a shared thing between the neighbors too, that they didn't want to, you know, use that material.
Exactly. It kind of goes against the grain, doesn't it, really?
And then the problem with using more concrete was the excavation and
the cost.
The cost would be a lot. And we really didn't want to lose that geology that is already there. Just really limiting that footprint of the project was the goal. So just putting everything in the scale.
It's interesting, Nahal, that you said you're from Iran. One of the speakers at the conference that I've just been to in Grunberg in Germany is the scientific curator at the Gothenburg Botanical Garden in Sweden, and her talk was about the Zagros Mountains. And they were hunting for and collecting seed of the Dionysia and bringing it back. And some of them were very rare to Sweden to prevent them from dying out, basically. And a fascinating process of trying to, I mean, I've dug out the picture of it growing, you know, on a rock face, you know, I mean, and that's like so many hundreds of feet up, but them creating in the Gothenburg Botanical Garden similar conditions to the stone in the mountains to try and, you know, get the right amount of moisture and the right amount of nutrients, and it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But
Wow.
the scenery was did you ever walk, and did you ever go to the Zagros Mountains or not? No.
No, unfortunately, I moved out when I was 15. Yeah,
Mm.
there's a lot of things I'm missing out from learning from the land and from the people, but hoping one day we will.
Go back. Yeah. No, absolutely fantastic.
A bit of a touchy subject.
Yeah, I know.
Conservation
Yeah,
problems with the Iranian government.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Exactly.
terrible.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah, one day.
There's incredible amounts of natural beauty in
Yeah, it's
Iran.
a
Yes,
very
yes.
diverse landscape.
It's
Every
really-
corner is completely different than the other, and it just one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of nice to know that, you know, these guys in the Gothenburg Botanical Garden are sort of helping to preserve and maintain, because apparently these are very, very difficult to grow. I don't know, Noel, if you've ever had any.
Well, the sort of things you see at these Alpine Garden Society shows. I mean, there's sort of these extraordinary
They're big
hemispheres of
cushions.
plant.
Yeah. No, fascinating.
Yes.
Well, we've got lots of comments about how inspiring and how lovely the butterflies and communities at the heart of design. That's so true, isn't it? And Joy saying, I judge for Keep Scotland Beautiful, which I kind of think that's not very difficult, is it? Because Scotland is so beautiful. So, you know, but anyway, albeit on a smaller scale, it's all about people caring for their local environment and improving it. And I see some amazing community projects. Yeah, there's really lots of lovely comments, and what a great project. How exciting to be still involved.
Yeah, great. No, we'll hopefully make it out to California again and come and see it for myself. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, keep in touch with us and tell us what other projects you're up to, because it would be nice to feature more projects of yours. And your process. I love, you know, it'd be lovely to dig deeper into the process as well. Fantastic.
Yeah, that might be worth sort of considering again, mightn't it, Annie?
Like a webinar or something.
Yes,
Definitely.
yes.
Yeah, definitely.
So we don't normally flag up next week's Thursday Garden Chats, but we will this time, because this is one that I've put quite a lot of work into. It's going to be quite an ambitious one, as we're hoping to get quite a large group of people together with the Black Flower Farmers, a mostly American group who are growing flowers various locations in the United States, and who've got together to empower themselves and share information. They're a really inspiring bunch, and it's also an opportunity to explore diversity issues in the horticulture industry. So hopefully join us next week.
Yeah, and don't forget Far Reaches as well. That, you know.
Oh yes, they'll be wonderful. They're amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great nursery, wonderful people, amazing sense of humor, and brilliant plants. So yeah, lots to share, lots to tell. Anyway, thank you very much, you guys. It's been lovely to step over there and just, you know, have a look at the West Coast and see what you've been up to. That was really inspiring. And
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for having us. Yeah,
That's all right.
Pleasure.
Okay, well, lovely to have you back sometime.
Absolutely.
Okay, take care. Have a good day. Take care.
Yeah,
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.